There are reasons people dislike you, and most of them have nothing to do with who you are. Read that again. Because somewhere along the way, you started believing the opposite. You started wondering if you talked too much or not enough, if you were too ambitious, too quiet, too confident, too distant, too something. But what if the tension you feel around certain people isn't about your flaws, but about what your presence awakens in them? Not because of what you said, not because of what you did, not because you tried to hurt anyone, but because you walked into a room carrying a certain light, and light has a strange effect on those who prefer the comfort of shadow. Carl Jung once said that everything that irritates us about others can lead us to an understanding of ourselves. Let that sink in. Irritation is often revelation. Discomfort is often exposure. And sometimes the reason someone tightens up around you is because you quietly mirror something they've been trying not to see. You are not attacking them. You are not competing with them. You are not even thinking about them. But they feel something, because you are a mirror. And mirrors don't create insecurity, they reflect it. Mirrors don't invent doubt, they reveal it. When someone stands in front of clarity while still wrestling with confusion, the reflection can feel cruel, even if it's neutral. So they call it arrogance. They call it coldness. They call it too much. Not because you are, but because your growth highlights their stagnation. Marcus Aurelius wrote that we suffer more in imagination than in reality, and often what people dislike about you exists mostly in their imagination. The story they tell themselves about your confidence, the meaning they attach to your silence, the threat they project onto your progress. You keep evolving, they feel left behind. You choose discipline, they feel exposed. You decide not to explain yourself anymore, they feel excluded. And slowly, without you changing anything fundamental about who you are, the atmosphere shifts. This video isn't about blaming them, and it's not about making you superior. It's about understanding a deeper psychological truth. Hate is often projection. Dislike is often defense. Rejection is often self-protection. And if you've ever felt confused by the sudden coldness, if you've ever sensed resistance when you were simply trying to grow, you need to hear this clearly. You are not the problem. If you're on a path of inner growth, if you're choosing awareness over comfort, discipline over impulse, truth over approval, subscribe, because this journey requires reminders, and today is one of them. In the next few minutes, we're going to break down the real reasons people react the way they do, not the surface excuses, the deeper mechanisms, the hidden tensions between light and shadow, between movement and stillness, between you and them. And it begins with something simple. Sometimes people dislike you because you remind them of what they're not. Sometimes people dislike you because you remind them of what they're not, and you feel it. The shift is subtle at first, a look that lingers a second too long, a tone that loses its warmth, an energy that cools without explanation. Nothing dramatic, nothing you can point to, just a quiet tightening in the air. You replay your words in your head. Was I too direct? Too confident? Too distant? But here's the truth. Not because you changed into someone arrogant, not because you tried to outshine anyone, not because you crossed a line. You simply grew. And growth has a way of unsettling those who have chosen to remain still. When someone postpones their potential long enough, it doesn't disappear. It waits. It lingers in the background like a shadow. And when you walk in, carrying movement, discipline, clarity, you become a reminder. A reminder of the book they never wrote, the boundary they never set, the risk they never took.
You are not accusing them. You are not even speaking about them. But your existence becomes a mirror. And mirrors don't argue. They don't judge. They just reflect. That reflection can be uncomfortable. Discomfort, when ignored, turns into defensiveness. Defensiveness, when repeated, turns into distance. And distance left unexplored hardens into dislike. It feels personal, but often it's psychological. Carl Jung believed that the parts of ourselves we refuse to confront don't disappear. They get projected outward, onto people, onto situations, onto you. So when someone reacts strongly to your discipline, your calm, your ambition, it may not be about your behavior. It may be about their buried truth rising to the surface. You become the reminder, the mirror, the quiet truth they were trying to postpone. And truth is not always welcomed. Aristotle once said that excellence is not an act, but a habit. When you commit to that habit, when you choose consistency over comfort, awareness over distraction, growth over stagnation, you unintentionally highlight the contrast. Light doesn't attack darkness, it simply reveals it. That revelation can sting. So they tell themselves a story about you. They call your focus obsession. They call your coldness coldness. They call your silence pride. Not because it is, but because it protects them from asking a harder question. Why didn't I do the same? Marcus Aurelius reminded himself daily that other people's actions come from their perceptions, not from your essence. What they see in you is filtered through their own fears, their own regrets, their own abandoned versions of themselves. You are moving forward. They are confronting what they left behind. You are choosing discipline. They are remembering hesitation. And the gap between those two states creates tension. Here's where it becomes dangerous. If you don't understand this dynamic, you shrink, you dim your light, you slow your growth, you soften your boundaries, all to make the reflection easier for someone else to tolerate. But shrinking yourself will not heal their discomfort. It will only betray your potential. You are not the problem. Your evolution is not an attack. Your clarity is not cruelty. Your ambition is not arrogance. It is simply alignment. The people who are meant to walk beside you will not feel threatened by your light. They will feel inspired by it. They will not interpret your growth as judgment. They will see it as possibility. Because when someone is committed to their own becoming, your progress does not intimidate them. It activates them. So if you've sensed distance after leveling up, if you've felt resistance after choosing yourself, understand what's happening beneath the surface. You are a reminder, and reminders awaken what others have tried to silence. This is only the first layer, because being a mirror is powerful, but it's not the only reason people react the way they do. There are deeper currents beneath this tension, and we're about to uncover them.
And being a reminder is only the beginning, because sometimes it goes deeper. Sometimes people react to you not just because you reflect something, but because you trigger something. You walk into a space grounded, calm, certain of who you are, not loud, not performative, just aligned. And suddenly, the temperature shifts. Not because you demanded attention, not because you tried to dominate, not because you were seeking validation, but because your certainty touches their uncertainty. In psychology, projection isn't just about seeing your flaws in others, it's about outsourcing your discomfort. When someone hasn't made peace with their own insecurities, confidence feels confrontational, stability feels threatening, self-trust feels arrogant. You didn't create the insecurity. You just pressed against it, like a hidden button under the surface. You didn't install it. You didn't design it. You simply brushed past it. And now it's activated. Jung believed that until we make the unconscious conscious, it will direct our lives, and we will call it fate. The same applies here. Until someone confronts their insecurity, they will call your presence the problem. But you are not the problem. You are the trigger, and triggers reveal what is unresolved. You are not responsible for shrinking your light to soothe someone else's shadow. And that leads to another layer. Sometimes people dislike you because you have something they want. Not something you stole, not something you flaunted, something you built. Success has a strange effect on comparison. Even quiet success, even internal success, peace, discipline, clarity, momentum. Jealousy rarely announces itself loudly. It hides. It shows up as subtle distance, as faint sarcasm, as faint praise that doesn't quite land. But jealousy is confession in disguise. It whispers, "I wish I had that." It mutters, "I wish I did that." Aristotle spoke of envy as pain at the sight of another's good fortune. Pain, not hatred, pain. And pain seeks relief. Sometimes that relief comes in the form of minimizing you, critiquing you, dismissing you. Not because your achievement is wrong, not because your progress is unfair, but because your existence intensifies their comparison. You do not need to apologize for what you earned. You do not need to dim what you cultivated. You do not need to carry guilt for discipline. Your growth is not theft. And then there's something even more destabilizing. You cannot be controlled. When you stop over-explaining, when you stop bending to every expectation, when you say no without a paragraph of justification, something shifts. Compliance is comfortable. Autonomy is disruptive. As long as you are predictable, agreeable, easily influenced, the system feels stable. But the moment you choose inner authority over external approval, the dynamic changes. Not because you became difficult, not because you became rebellious for the sake of it, but because you became self-governing.
Marcus Aurelius reminded himself that the only true freedom is mastery over one's own mind. When you practice that, you become less manipulable. Guilt loses its grip, pressure loses its leverage, and to someone who relied on that leverage, your boundaries feel like betrayal. They are not. A boundary is not an attack. Autonomy is not aggression. Self-respect is not hostility. You are not the problem. But it doesn't stop there. Sometimes the reaction runs deeper than insecurity, deeper than jealousy, deeper than control. Sometimes you represent their unlived life. There are dreams people quietly froze, risks they paused indefinitely, versions of themselves they abandoned out of fear. Over time, those abandoned versions do not disappear. They linger as regret. Regret hardens. Regret whispers. Regret watches. And when you continue moving, when you choose courage where they chose hesitation, when you evolve where they stopped, your presence becomes a reminder of the road not taken. Not because you judged them, not because you compared yourself, but because you kept walking. You continued where they froze, and that contrast is heavy. It awakens the what if, the I could have, the I should have. You are not responsible for the weight of their regret. You are not accountable for the dreams they set aside. Their stopped journey is not your burden. You are not the problem. And finally, there is something almost paradoxical. Your joy threatens their misery. In a world where complaint is common and cynicism is currency, quiet contentment feels rebellious. When someone has normalized dissatisfaction, your peace feels unnatural. Not because it's fake, not because it's naive, but because it disrupts the narrative that suffering is inevitable. If someone has built identity around struggle without growth, around pain without reflection, around resentment without change, your joy becomes evidence that another path exists, and evidence is uncomfortable. Joy, in that context, is defiance, short, clear, unapologetic. You laugh without permission. You rest without guilt. You move without bitterness. And that freedom highlights their self-imposed prison. Marcus Aurelius wrote about choosing one's response regardless of circumstance. When you embody that choice, when you cultivate peace internally rather than waiting for the world to grant it, you step outside the collective misery, not to escape others, but to refuse unconscious suffering. Your peace does not require approval. Your joy does not need validation. Your light does not need permission. You are not the problem. You are the mirror. You are the trigger. You are the contrast. You are the continuation. You are the proof that another way is possible. And we've only scratched the surface of why that can unsettle people, because beneath all of this, there is a deeper pattern in human nature itself.
And then you realize that hatred was never a verdict. It was only a reaction of darkness when light appears, a reaction of the mirror when someone is forced to see the part they have always avoided. You were not hated because you were wrong. Not because you were too much, not because you changed, but because your growth exposes their stagnation. Marcus Aurelius reminded us that we cannot control how others respond, only how we choose to move forward. And that is all you need to do. Keep walking, keep healing, keep choosing truth. Do not apologize for outgrowing who you used to be. Do not dim your light to fit into rooms devoted to shadow. Do not turn yourself into a mirror that absorbs everyone else's emotional weight. You were not born to carry another person's insecurity. You do not exist to soothe the discomfort that arises when they must face themselves. Jung wrote that what people fear most is not evil, but their own shadow. And when you live truthfully, you inevitably become the mirror reflecting that shadow. But listen, you are not the shadow, you are the light. Hatred is not a sentence, it is evidence of friction. Friction between growth and stagnation, between movement and stillness, between those who dare to evolve and those who are afraid to. And if today you feel exhausted from constantly proving that you are not the problem, pause for a moment. Take a slow breath. You do not need another explanation. Your peace does not require approval. Your maturity does not require permission. Keep walking, keep healing, keep choosing truth. Some people will leave when you no longer fit the story they prefer to tell. Some will feel unsettled when you refuse to stay small. That is not loss, it is alignment. Light does not argue with darkness, it simply continues to shine. So if you are on this path, know that you are not alone. There are others learning to stop apologizing for their growth. There are others choosing truth over comfort, and we walk together. In quiet strength, in steadiness. If you want to go deeper into this inner journey, continue with the next video. Not to find a new answer, but to remember what you have always known. Now, slow your breath, steady your step, hold your light. Keep walking, keep healing, keep choosing truth. Let every reaction remain just that, a reaction. And you remain yourself.